Wonderful, isn't it? There is perhaps no more refined instrument in the world than the violin. Nicola Paganini, Antonio Vivaldi. These names are firmly associated with the art of the highest class. Today's story is about a man who also loved violins, even though he couldn't play them. Let's try to figure out how Stradivarius, Ninja Turtles, and Russia are connected. My name is Tommy, this is From Russia with Crime, and we begin. (1996) Moscow, the Mikhail Glinka Museum. One night, an alarm suddenly went off in the hall. A security guard went to check. Everything was quiet, the front door was closed, and no one was there, but the alarm continued to sound. The rest of the night passed as usual. When the guard began his rounds in the morning, something terrible was revealed. From the investigation notes. When the alarm went off, the security guard made sure the front door was locked, but neglected the back door, using which the burglars entered the premises. After disarming the alarm, they smashed the display case and stole violins made by Stradivarius and Steiner. When the police arrived, they could only document the theft. They were unable to apprehend the criminals. And now, in the place where the priceless violins had once been, there was a crowbar. If you are not an expert on violins, I can only offer one comparison. A Stradivarius violin is the Rolls-Royce of automobiles, or the Brioni of clothing. Exceptional quality and attention to details produce an astonishing sound. The violin was originally made for Queen Elizabeth of Belgium, who was very fond of music. But one day, during a musical evening, she heard a performance by the Russian violinist David Oistrakh. Elizabeth couldn't believe such violin-playing talent could exist. Therefore, she bequeathed the Stradivarius violin to a Russian violinist. Thus, the violin found its way to Russia, where, after Oistrakh's death, it was donated to a museum. But now, instead of adoring the history of music and delighting the museum visitors, the violins were hidden away, likely awaiting sale. The experts estimated the value of the stolen violins at $2 million, but everything wasn't that simple. Emiran Oganezov, musical instrument expert. The people who stole the violins didn't fully understand the classical instrument market. These violins could only be sold for a higher price with a certificate. It would seem who wouldn't issue a certificate for an original Stradivarius violin, but in reality it's much more complicated. Only 4 people in the world are authorized to issue certificates of authenticity for violins: Etienne Watelot in France, Karl Roy in Germany, Giambotta Marassi in Italy, and Charles Beer in England. But since the Russian side immediately notified the experts about the theft of the instruments, obtaining the certificate has become a challenge. And how is it possible to smuggle the violins out of the country when literally everyone is looking for them? Meanwhile, the investigation of the theft continued, but it gave no results. Then, detectives equipped themselves with hidden cameras and visited dozens of antique shops, questioning the owners about the violins. But beyond knowledge and interesting historical facts, they couldn't find anything. One day, the museum phone rang. Слушаю. Здравствуйте. Ваши скрипки у нас, и мы бы хотели вам их вернуть. Правда? Это было бы замечательно. Ну, не бесплатно, конечно. 3 миллиона немецких марок будет достаточно. Что? Дальнейшие инструкции сообщу позже. After this call, the head of the museum immediately contacted the police, and they began to devise a plan. First, they asked the criminals for proof that the violins were real. Then, they received the address of the locker room and an access code. Opening the locker, the police got a videotape and a letter with following content. Dear gentlemen, you have a unique opportunity to return the violins. The terms are extremely simple. 3 million German marks and 1,000 mark notes. The deadline is June 28th. If you make a mistake, I assure you there will be no second chance. I'm making a deal because I sincerely want the violence to remain in Russia. What was happening increasingly resembled a scene from a movie, and according to the plot, the police, of course, began preparing the plan to catch the robbers. One of the bank agreed to provide a safe deposit box where the museum workers were to leave the money, and criminals would bring the violence. And after this exchange, criminals supposed to be arrested. But the robbers were likely not that stupid. It didn't attempt to fall for such a trivial trick, so they never contacted again. The violence vanished without a trace. One autumn morning in 1996, the police received a call from the State Library. A frightened female voice that the 296 copies had disappeared from the rare books room, including the first Russian printed book and a 16th century Gospel. From the investigation notes. The burglars cut through the iron mesh and entered the library. Then, going around the building, they broke down the utility room window and climbed inside. Passing security, the criminals approached the door leading to the rare books section. Likely, aware of the door's alarm, the burglars sawed a hole in the door and entered the room. A second clean and daring robbery, and once again, antiques had disappeared. It was clear that both robberies were the work of the same gang, and again, no clues, no witnesses. The police had no choice but to check every bookstore in the city. Surprisingly, it worked. One day, a young man came into the bookstore and asked about the price on some rare books from the museum's list. After this, he got into his car and drove home. As soon as he pulled up to his house, he was immediately arrested. The detained book lover turned out to be a young man named Yakov, with the common Russian surname Grigoriev. He was the son of a well-known city fashion designer and a graduate of a military academy. Initially, the young man claimed to have purchased the books on the street, but under pressure from investigators, he confessed to the theft. He claimed to have acted alone and simply grabbed the first thing he saw. Then was an investigative experiment, during which museum staff immediately recognized the detainee as their new janitor, who had started working there only 2 weeks earlier. It seemed the job was done, the crime solved and the robber arrested. But there was one problem. Only a few books were confiscated from Yakov Grigoriev. The remaining 200 had disappeared. It was also clear to investigators that the museum robbery and the library robbery were the work of the same group. The crimes were too similar, but numerous interrogations gave no results. Grigoriev denied any connection to the violent case and refused to name his accomplices. Then, suddenly, the phone rang at the police station.
Милиция. Западная автостоянка, задний двор.
What was this? A vital clue or a prank? Detectives immediately went to the address, where they saw 8 blue bags. The police didn't dare approach. A bomb squad was called. Imagine their surprise when the bags turned out to be filled with the stolen books, all 200 copies. While museum employees were giving interviews and showing journalists the returned books, the investigators worked day and night trying to trace the caller. They used every possible means, but everything was in vain. And as often happens, chance helped the detectives. In the city of Sochi, a traffic police inspector stopped a driver who wasn't wearing a seatbelt. During the document check, the driver was visibly nervous, as if hiding something. It was decided to verify his identity. The driver turned out to be Igor Shaidurov, a military academy graduate. So what it seemed, but there was one thing. Shaidurov graduated from the same military academy as Yakov Grigoriev. Moreover, detectives found photographs of Shaidurov and Grigoriev together, as if they were close friends. Shaidurov didn't deny anything. He told the police about the theft of the books and even where the violins were hidden. As it turned out, the friends met during their studies and instantly became close. Their love for easy money was the motivation. They combined military training with stealing things from apartments. After the graduation, they said goodbye to the army in their own way, by stealing antique vases from the hall of the central house of the Soviet army. For the theft of books and violins, Shaidurov received 7 years in prison and Grigoriev received 8 years. Both were released on probation. Yakov Grigoriev, being in prison, changed his last name to Subbota. It seemed he wanted to start a new life. In early 2004, a series of daring crimes rocked St. Petersburg. Remarkably, the victims were very wealthy individuals, show business stars, managers, and company owners. From the investigation notes, the robber specifically chose a time when only women and children were in the apartment, claimed himself as a property management employee, entered, and threatening everyone with a stun gun, locked everyone in the bathroom. Then he stole all the valuables and disappeared. With such brazen performance, it's no surprise that the robber was caught. It turned out to be our friend Yakov Subbota, and he went to prison again. But another prison sentence didn't reform this already experienced criminal. In prison, he devised a plan for a robbery of the century, where he could steal $1 billion. Obviously, such things can't be done alone. It required accomplices. People willing to quickly get $1 billion, however, were quickly found. In total, 9 people, including Yakov Subbota, became a gang.
На нас упали с потолка. Люди в камуфляже.
Что-то говорили как-то, как они с вами?
Лежать и все. На пол положили и, собственно, мы так и лежали. Не били, не изувечили, и слава богу. Но так да, ни ударов, ничего не было.
From the investigation notes. The robbers set up surveillance of the bank building and discovered that a plumber frequently visited the basement next to the bank entrance. Having forced open the door, the criminals easily entered the basement, where they dismantled the wall adjacent to the vault. Having completed this successful operation, the criminals decided to go on a major heist that would assure their rich living. But here, the things weren't that simple. Unlike the smaller branches, now the criminals had to rob a central vault. To do this, they needed to know an access code consisted of 2 parts. Each was known only by one person, the bank manager. The gang split up. One group went to the first manager, Svetlana Yegorova. Armed men burst into her apartment, took her entire family hostage, and forced them to hand over the vault keys and access codes. From Svetlana Yegorova's memoirs.
Зашла, я почувствовала огромный толчок, удар просто. Я полетела в коридор, меня головой сразу резко ударили в стену. Я просто упала, не могу понять вообще, в чем дело. И когда я открыла глаза, смотрю, сын орет на кухню, видимо, толчком его. Мужа очень сильно избивали, повалили, один держал ноги, руки, один сидел на спине, а четвертый его душил. Он был весь в крови, просто. Из рта, из носа, и вообще бровь ему всю разбили. Это страшно и ужасно. Ко мне подошел мужчина низкого роста. Он начал меня допрашивать: это ты, это ты. Я говорю: кто я? Ты заведующая, ты заведующая. Я говорю: я заведующая. Мы вообще не понимали, что происходит.
The second part of the gang, led by Yakov Subbota, headed for the second bank manager, Andrei Solopov, from the memoirs of Andrei Solopov.
Я думаю, ну, елки-палки, если это грабители дачные, ну, хана. Сейчас будут просить денег, денег, естественно, нет. Будут говорить, что я вру, будет тут очень все жестко. Потом они говорят: ну, пришли банк брать. Я думаю, ну, ладно, слава богу, банк брать, значит, живыми останемся точно.
Having obtained everything they needed, one part of the group went to rob the bank, while the other, along with Yakov Subbota, remained to guard the hostages. It would seem like a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster, a perfect plan, flawless execution, but as usual, one tiny and insignificant thing ruined everything. That day, the bank manager's wife was celebrating her birthday, and a festive table was set at home. Yakov Subbota treated himself to a peach. Meanwhile, another group broke into the bank, but instead of the promised billion, they were left with much smaller sum, just 1 million rubles, about $30,000. When Yakov Subbota heard this, he was very upset and ordered his subordinates to quickly pack up and leave. From the investigation notes. When forensic experts arrived on the scene, they found 2 peach pits on the table, which were used to identify the criminal's DNA. So, Yakov Subbota ended up behind bars again, but he didn't name his accomplices. However, without a leader, they screwed up themselves. It looks like a well-oiled scheme. The employees are tied up and access to the vault is free. But there was one unexpected twist. The criminals were unaware that all their actions were being recorded live by surveillance cameras at the bank's central office. After the criminals entered the bank, the police immediately arrived on the scene. Thus, the story of the elusive Ninja Turtles ended. But what happened to their sensei? After his arrest, Yakov Subbota faked a mental breakdown and instead of going to prison, ended up in a psychiatric hospital, from which he was released a few years later and managed to commit another crime. But where did this passion for crimes come from? Given an interview to Russian television after his arrest, Yakov Subbota didn't seem like a sinister criminal. An ordinary middle-aged man, wearing glasses, behaves politely and sensibly. Subbota admits he is an avid gambler, and all his crimes were committed because of debts.
Нет такого места, где бы я на тот момент уже не отметился, да? Делал я, в общем-то, ставки крупные. Значит, причиной и поводом для совершения краж явились мои долги.
Yakov Subbota recalls his theft of the violence like it was his ordinary day.
Охрана, которая была в музее Глинки на тот момент, она совершенно не соответствовала, по крайней мере, ценностям для их сохранности. Для того, чтобы совершить это преступление, мне понадобилась одна фомка, которую я благополучно оставил на месте этих скрипов. Но юмор мой, как позже выяснилось, никто не оценил.
And the story of the book theft sounds downright comical. The robber admits he knows nothing about books, so he had no specific goal. From Yakov Subbota's testimony. We tried to take as much as possible. Then, the most valuable exhibits were selected from this volume. All the news reports were full of excitement about the first printed book, Apostle, calling it incredibly valuable, but in reality, no one was interested. There were no requests for its purchase. But the theft of violins and books didn't help Yakov Subbota to pay off his debts. Then he had to return to his old business. From Yakov Subbota's testimony. Creditors gave me a list of people who had large sums of money at home. Among them was the head of the Moscow theater, the head of the train station, and the pop star Philip Kirkorov. Yakov Subbota remembers all his accomplices and every detail of the robberies, even the smallest, and he remembers especially well how much money he managed to steal.
Вот, допустим, на Бабушкина эпизод, там 6,5 тысяч изделий. 6,5 тысяч умножаем на 3, получаем, сколько там получается? 21 килограмм золота. Вот. Существенно, как бы можно просчитать уже, да, согласиться, да, неплохо.
Subbota also remembered about his dream, a bank branch in Vyborg, where he hoped to steal a fortune, but failed.
Рассчитывали получить вот из Выборга, из этого
С Выборга
Да.
миллиард почти. С Выборга почти миллиард.
А кто известил о том, что там такая сумма аккумулировалась или была бы, собрана
Я,
лучшим?
вот, допустим, информация получалась разными способами, в том числе и, как вы знаете, я точнее активно использовал прослушку разного рода и через крышу, через вентиляцию, и через низ, через пол, и через, все возможные способы, доступные, которые только могли быть.
Now, behind bars once again, Yakov Subbota can finally relax. He don't have any debts.
А сейчас у вас есть какой-то долг?
Сейчас нету людей, вот, которым я был должен. Это самое главное.
This was a story about Yakov Subbota and his turtles, and it perfectly captures the spirit of that time. On one side, a crumbling state and complete economic collapse. On the other, the glittering sights of the restaurants and casinos. And it was these signs which led Yakov Subbota to the place where he is now. Today, all he can do is to remember how he once played his greatest and the most famous violin etude. This was Siberian Tommy, and from Russia with Crime. До скорого.